Uh, Hellen Kooijman has background in journalism. She is specialized in Eastern European history with focus on the former Soviet Union and modern Bulgaria. Since the persistent refugee crisis in Europe, she's more focused on how the European Union is dealing with refugees, especially Afghan refugees. Together with Vera Mering, she founded in 2017 the Facebook platform Don't Send Afghans Back, for positive action against the deportation of Afghan refugees. Today she will speak about different European countries' assessment of security in Afghanistan and consequent practices regarding the asylum deportation, special case Netherlands. Please welcome Hellen Kooijman.
Thank you. So I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I'm a journalist, but I studied and I was focused on Soviet Union, history of Soviet Union, and I'm now currently covering Bulgarian politics. And I'm going to talk about European countries and the assessments of the security in Afghanistan. And I will focus on the Netherlands, but while I was preparing this presentation, I realized the importance of also focusing on Bulgaria, which is the poorest European Union member, maybe you know. Because I began to realize that the European Union as a whole is moving in the direction of Bulgaria's policy regarding Afghan asylum seekers. Bulgaria sets an example for other countries when it comes to the treatment of Afghan refugees. This is a bad example, in my opinion, a good one in the opinion of others, but I will come back to you about this at the end of my talk. Let's focus on the people concerned, Afghan refugees. I would like to share with you the story of an Afghan family who came to the Netherlands 3 years ago. After 2.5 years, they were running out of possibilities, and what was left was a voluntarily return to Afghanistan or opposing this and being forced to go back. This family, it's not this family because this is another family, but this family chose a different way, and with the help of some Dutch citizens, they crossed the border to Germany. They requested asylum there, and remarkably enough, they received a residence permit in Germany in less than 3 months. One might think that there is a direct link between the safety situation in Afghanistan and the recognition rates of refugees from Afghanistan. The worse the situation, the higher the recognition rates, and the fewer refugees are being sent back. That sounds logical, doesn't it? The reality, however, is very different. There are huge differences between EU member states when it comes to the treatment of Afghan asylum seekers, and I have identified 4 differences between the member states that I deem the most important. The first one is the differences in recognition rates. The second one, differences in dealing with Dublin regulation. The third one, differences in expulsions. And 4, the differences in public support throughout the European Union. Let's start with the differences in recognition rates. What you see here is a map of European Union member states in 2017, sources Eurostat. The countries colored blue, dark blue, are countries where thousands of Afghans applied for asylum and where the percentage of Afghans allowed to stay is high. For example, Italy, France, the percentage is more than 90% there. Portugal also, Slovakia, but there apply only, I think, 10 to 15 refugees in 2017. I will give you another, this is maybe better than you will see it written. So, difference in recognition rates, 90%, Italy 92% in 2017, 91.5 Switzerland, France 84, Austria 70, Belgium, Germany 46, the Netherlands 35, Sweden 37, UK 36. And one of the lowest recognition rate is Bulgaria. 1.5% of Afghan asylum seekers are getting their residence permits or another protection. Let's have a closer look to the recognition rate in my home country, the Netherlands. The Netherlands has become stricter. 2 years ago, the recognition percentage was over 52%, so around 20% more than today. And what you see in my home country is that still, what we did before was we looked primarily at the stories of individual asylum seekers rather than at Afghanistan as a country in conflict of war, as is the case for Syria and Yemen. And a lot of human and children's rights organizations try with reports to persuade the Dutch government to change this policy, but that didn't succeed. So the Dutch government is still assessing by individual cases and not looking differently to the situation in Afghanistan as a country in war or in conflict. There are two minor changes since August this year. Afghan women, Afghan single women do have more chance to get a residence permit, as are families with children under 18 years old. If these families came from a place where the security situation is extremely dangerous, then the Dutch government think they could not be sent back to Kabul, because Kabul is also for these families not a safe place. For everyone else, so young people, families with older children, Kabul is a safe place. So I asked our service, our Dutch Return and Departure Service, how many Afghan families are now in their caseloads, and there are 160 Dutch Afghan families in the caseloads, and the ones that cannot be sent back because of this minor change in law regarding the safety situation. Afghanistan are only 10, so the rest are threatened to be sent back to Kabul or to another country according to the Dublin regulation. I will come to this now, because there are also a lot of differences in dealing with Dublin regulations. I think we all know that asylum seekers are mostly heading for Western and Northern European countries because their future perspectives are much better in these countries and not, for example, to Greece or Bulgaria. Bulgaria did witness a lot of Afghan refugees coming through Bulgaria on their way to Northern and Western countries. And for these Afghan refugees, it's crucial that they didn't give their fingerprints in Bulgaria, because being sent back to Bulgaria with a recognition rate of lower than 1 to 5% means that, according to the Dublin regulation, this is practically the same as sending them back to Afghanistan. So sending back someone to Bulgaria, according to the Dublin regulation, is almost the same as sending back to Afghanistan. And Western European countries, they know this. The European Commission know this. The unfair treatment of Afghan nationals by the Bulgarian authorities was highlighted in a letter sent by the European Commission to Bulgaria in July 2017. And in this letter, the European Commission stated that, and I quote, Bulgaria's recognition rate of Afghan nationals is strikingly low compared to the rate of recognition for the same nationality in other EU countries. Still, countries differ in use of Dublin regulation when it comes to Bulgaria. There have been some lawsuits in which the judge agreed to the request not to return Afghans to Bulgaria, for example in Italy, which is, in my opinion, very interesting because Italy already has a very high recognition rate. But on the 3rd of November 2017, the Italian Council of State suspended the Dublin transfer of an Afghan national from Italy to Bulgaria because they found it's not safe enough for this Afghan national to be sent back to Bulgaria, because the chance not having a permit, not having protection is huge. This was not the case in other countries, such as the Netherlands and Austria. In Austria, even an Afghan family with small children was sent back to Bulgaria. I think it was 1 year ago. Maybe it's more interesting to have a look to the West and Northern European countries and how they deal with the Dublin regulation. Because in this respect, Italy and especially France are interesting to look at a little closer. We see that in different lawsuits, Italy and France decided that returning Afghans under the Dublin regulation is a violation of human rights. In June of this year, for example, the Court of Rome decided that an Afghan male without a support network in Afghanistan could not be returned to Italy. Could not be returned from Italy to Norway because of the risk of deportation from Norway to Kabul. And in France, in March of this year, the courts also decided the same for 2 Afghan foreigners who had applied for asylum in Finland. They were in danger according to the courts in Afghanistan, and Kabul was not safe enough to send them back to, so they were not sent back to Finland. In June this year, the court in Nantes, also in France, decided that an Afghan asylum seeker whose asylum application was rejected in Belgium could not return to Belgium because of the fact that he would be expelled to Afghanistan. So this is interesting. In Italy and France, some judges decide Kabul is too dangerous to send Afghans back to, but governments like the Dutch and Belgium believe Kabul is safe. So I would like to go to the differences in percentages of expulsions. It's very difficult to find the actual number of expulsions of every European Union state. And if someone has all these figures, I really would like to see them. I dived into it, but I didn't find the real figures per country, and I think this is also has to do with the fact that sometimes Afghans are deported and then later retrieved due to errors in procedure. But if you have these figures, be my guest. I want to focus on the Netherlands, therefore. The latest figures about expulsions, so Afghans being sent back from the Netherlands, from the 1st of January 2015 until now, the forced departures, 230, voluntary departures, 490, and 2018, January, August, forced departures, 30, and departures voluntarily, 40. It doesn't sound a lot, I think, but what is, for me, it's interesting to see is that there are 360 Afghan nationals that are left independently without supervision. This was in 2018. From January till August 2018, there were 316 Afghan nationals that are not in the picture of the Dutch government anymore. So I think they are strolling around in the Netherlands, or like this Afghan family went to Germany or somewhere in European Union. We don't know. I would like to go to another difference in when it comes to European Union members, the difference in public support. This is a picture of one of the demonstrations, one of the protests we did in Utrecht with Amnesty International. And of course, it's very important. The system per country is very important, and there's a lot of difference in asylum system per country. But in practice, it turns out that the level of support Afghans get in a country from the population there matters as well. And this especially seems to be in countries where refugee rates are lower than average. And I would like to focus again on the two countries I know the best, which is Bulgaria and the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, there is currently a coalition made up of 4 political parties, 2 of them with a Christian signature and 2 with a more right-wing central signature. The 2 largest parties are strict when it comes to granting asylum applications. The 2 smaller parties struggle more with this item. And there is some opposition against this policy coming from left-wing parties in the parliament, but also on local level. And this is interesting because we witnessed that more than 11 municipal councils, including those from big cities such as Maastricht, Rotterdam, Amsterdam, have spoken out against the expulsions of Afghans. In practice, this is a symbolic gesture primarily, but in some of these municipal councils, there are also politicians from the government parties. So when more municipal councils are joining this movement, if you can put it like this maybe will change something in Dutch policy. There were several protests in the Netherlands, not only from citizens but also from large organizations such as Amnesty International, Defense for Children, and a number of church communities. We have a lot of church communities supporting Afghans, and so far this opposition has not led to an actual change of policy, but several expulsions were prevented because of lobbying behind the scenes and because of pressure put on our government by citizens and these large organizations who stand up for Afghans. Our Minister of Migration has already used his discretionary powers a number of times, allowing Afghans to stay. How different it is in Bulgaria. I was there a lot of times and I made a lot of reports and witnessed how Bulgarians treat Afghan asylum seekers, and there's hardly any support for Afghan asylum seekers. On the contrary, they are seen as illegal migrants or fortune hunters, but not as refugees fleeing from violence and oppression. In fact, there are several civilians who have formed civil guards to find asylum seekers or illegal migrants, and this is important, just keep that in mind, as they are called, and transfer them to the Bulgarian police. You see here, these are, I don't know if these are Afghan nationals, but most of the people coming in now in Bulgaria are Afghan nationals, and they were hunted in the forest when they come from Turkey and crossing the border into Bulgaria. And there are some national groups like these groups that are detaining and sometimes all beating these refugees up and hand them over to the police. One of the most famous director of human rights organization, Bulgarian Helsinki Committee, she stated like this, because what you see, I forgot to tell, it's not only that these civil guards, if you can put it like this, are against refugees coming in, but most of Bulgarians do support the Bulgarian policy. Bulgaria is a very poor country. The average income is 400 leva, which is 200 euro. So people coming in from Afghanistan, from Iraq, from Syria, they have more money. So what are they doing here? They are fortune seekers. They don't want to stay here in Bulgaria, so they are not refugees. They are in the mind of a lot of Bulgarians. They are illegal migrants, so they don't have they don't need protection. When you're poor, in the mind of a lot of Bulgarians, this is not an argument for protection. So I think one of the, what I said already, the director of the Bulgarian Helsinki Committee, Ilyana Savova, she put it like this. There's a general assumption in Bulgaria that Afghans are not eligible for asylum status. Afghans are illegal migrants, not refugees. Okay. There are lots of things going on in the European Union. I think it's too much to talk about today. We mentioned already the joint way forward. I wanted to talk about this and I wanted to dive into it, but it's a very complicated deal. It's not one-to-one that the joint way forward is, let's put it differently. It's not only the joint way forward, there are also bilateral agreements. It's not only this, and you can't say the joint way forward is the main reason for sending these huge numbers of Afghan nationals back to Afghanistan, if there are large numbers at all, because that's also doubtful. So, but what is, for me, is interesting is that in 2017, 47.4% of European Union member states, so the average recognition rate of Afghan asylum seekers in 2017 is 47.4%. That means that most of them don't get a residence permit, don't get recognition. This is interesting. Where are they? I want to end this talk with a personal note. I said at the beginning that I feared that the European Union might move in the direction of the Bulgarian policy. And let me adjust the words of Mr. Savova, the director of the Bulgarian Helsinki Committee. And instead of Bulgaria, I will write European Union, and I will weaken the saying a little bit by putting the word most before Afghans. There is a general assumption in the European Union that most Afghans are not eligible for asylum status. I think this is food for thought.
Thank you very much.